everyone, and welcome to October Awareness Month. In October, there are several different awareness months for different exceptionalities, such as autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, dyslexia, Down syndrome, and mental health. Today, I'm going live to discuss learning disabilities and accommodations, and how we can use accommodations to help individuals with learning disabilities have a better access to their education. Now, before I go further, I want to make sure you've taken a chance to like the Garforth Education page, join the Garforth Educators group if you're an educator, the Garforth Education's Exceptional Parent group if you're a parent of a child with diverse learning needs, and the Garforth Education Parent group if you're a parent. I hope you're going to enjoy today's talk. And the main thing that I want to talk about when it comes to accommodations, and really this is applicable to anyone with an exceptionality, not just an individual with learning disabilities, it is that you need to make sure that you understand what the goal of the assignment is. Now, if the goal of the assignment is working on assessing a weakness for the student, whether it's checking their math fact fluency or their ability to write a sentence or their reading ability, then it is appropriate not to use an accommodation because you are trying to test that skill. However, in every other circumstance, if you are not working on that skill, you should do your best and give the child or the student access to what they need to succeed. So what I mean by this is, if you have a student that is supposed to read a book for school and the point is to have them learn from what they're reading and answer questions about the book, then it's important that you give them access to the book. If their reading level is below that of the book, then they aren't going to have the skills to read that book and focus on reading it fluently and their comprehension. This is because it is at either their frustration level, which means that they are spending too much time trying to decode words and figure out what they're reading to put the proper attention into reading the material and understand what they're reading. So they're not going to have the amount of memory that they need to think about what's happening in the text they are reading. They have to focus on what the words are saying. And this can be a very labor-intensive process for them and frustrating, because while they are trying to figure out what the words say, their peers are able to read it and just focus on the meaning. So if you are doing, textbooks or novel studies and it's above your student's reading level, make sure that they have access to an audio version of that text. I would highly recommend you have them follow along with the audiobook, because then they'll still have the exposure to what the words look like when they're printed, and it might help boost some of their reading skills. But do not expect them to read this material and understand what is being communicated in it, because they're focusing on trying to decode the words and figure out what it's saying. They are not focusing on what the questions are going to be asking, because they don't have enough room in their working memory, which is the memory that you use when you're taking information in and trying to use it. So that is why you will often hear of the accommodation or the adaptation of having audiobooks or a text-to-speech software used, so that children who have a lower reading level have access to the printed text that they are expected to read for school. Now, another accommodation is extra time on assignments and in testing situations or exam situations. And this is because if it's taking them longer to read the material and comprehend or understand what they are reading, then they aren't being given the same amount of time as their peers because it takes them longer to complete the same task. Now, for a student that doesn't need the extra time, being given the extra time isn't going to be necessary. And you can see this when, in a classroom setting, you're going to have, a test for an hour, and there's going to be kids that need that whole hour, and there are kids that are done in half an hour. And even though they've gone through their test, they know the answers. It's easy for them to process the information, come up with the answer, and write it correctly. So it all has to do with their ability to process the information, create their answer in an efficient manner. Now, this takes longer for some children than it does for others, so we need to acknowledge this. And if it's something that they need support in, then giving them that extra time is not a thing of cheating. It's letting them give their ability to show you what they know. Another accommodation is the use of a computer. Now, some individuals with disabilities struggle with organizing their thoughts, and having the ability to use a word processor when they're writing means that they're able to move their ideas around the page with cut and paste. They can edit the information, and it's a lot easier to understand once they've done this, instead of getting frustrated writing it down on paper. You can also have them check their spelling with a spell checker, which is great because it makes it easier for you to read, and they don't have the same insecurities, especially if they know that their spelling is an area of weakness. Using a computer also helps individuals that have issues with fine motor skills and things like dysgraphia, where the actual process of putting the words down on the paper, writing them down, is very difficult, and it takes a lot of work and concentrated effort, so they're not able to put that effort and time into their responses. Other adaptations or accommodations you can make are having the student give you answers in point form. If you're trying to assess whether they can write an essay or a paragraph answer, then asking them to do that is appropriate. But if you're simply trying to get them to convey that they understand the topic that you're asking questions about, and they can show you their information, there's no reason why this shouldn't be in point form, for several reasons. One, it allows you to see what that student knows about the topic. It means that they're not going to have to put the effort and concentration into trying to formulate that grammatically correct sentence that can be time-consuming, stressful, and inhibit their ability or prevent them from really showing you their true understanding of what they are knowing about this topic. Now, note form also is faster for them, so if it's a matter of, trying to get through the test in a reasonable amount of time, allowing them to write it in note form is better. And this is another reason why the students also are sometimes given the option of doing written responses orally. And I highly recommend this, and even doing it for all of your students. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and understanding these strengths and weaknesses have an impact on how they're able to show you their knowledge. And that's what we're wanting them to do. We want them to show you the knowledge that they have in the best way that they can. And for some students, it's through writing. Other students, it's through speaking or doing a PowerPoint. And doing that is going to really allow you as a teacher to see if they're understanding the material that you're teaching, and not necessarily have them, have it in a nice long prose, because if that's not their strength and it's not the point of the lesson, why are we penalizing them for something that they aren't being assessed on? As students get older and move towards university, these are skills that they do need to develop, but we need to pick when it's best to work on these skills. Another accommodation that is extremely important is the use of a calculator, especially for students with math disabilities. Now, if you're asking or you're trying to assess whether they have a good fact fluency, then yes, don't have them use a calculator. But if you are asking them to do calculations where having that calculator to do the simple addition and subtraction, multiplication and division answers are going to mean that they can do more and have more accurate work, because it may be an issue with processing speed, and the time that it takes them to answer that simple addition question is so long, or the multiplication is, if they don't have their math facts, then letting them use a calculator to get those is going to make them be more confident in their work and allow them to answer more questions correctly in the same amount of time. It means that they can show you that they understand the process and the procedure, and when you have a student using a calculator, you can still insist that they show you all the steps that they took to get there, to show you that they have the understanding to do this. And you need to very clearly communicate that if you just write the answer, that it's not a correct answer, because they're not showing you their process. Now, if you let everyone in your class use a calculator for these things, you will see that students that have their timetables memorized and know those basic math facts very quickly, they'll find that actually using the calculator takes too long. It's too much extra work for them to do it. So they'll just do it in their mind. So the big point that I want to get across to you is that when it comes to accommodations and adaptations to students' education, it's important to ask yourself what you are trying to assess in that moment. If you are trying to assess something that's a difficulty for that student, they still need to be assessed in that area. But if you are not, then it's better to focus on seeing if they understand the concepts and the knowledge that you're assessing, and not testing them on additional skills that their peers aren't having. If you have any other questions about accommodations or modifications, please feel free to send them to me and I'd be happy to answer them. Now, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like that Garforth Education Facebook page. Join the Garforth Education Educators group if you're an educator, and the Garforth Education Exceptional Parents group if you're a parent of a child with exceptional abilities or special needs and is neurodiverse. Take care and have a great day.